Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. This video is an urgent call to action because of a decision that the FEI is expected to make in the next month. So I need you all to listen up and be prepared to send some emails, share this, tell your friends, because the FEI is expected to approve a rule change that is going to take us backwards when it comes to horse welfare. And already in FEI sanctioned sports, we are already seeing massive welfare issues being enabled by the FEI. And for an organization that has a horse welfare code of conduct that claims that welfare of the horse is paramount and that no riding that is abusive or causes pain or distress should be allowed, this is very concerning. So the rule change that they are expected to approve in the next month is one that will downgrade the visible bleeding from the horse's mouth or nose from an elimination offense to an administrative warning, which means that it'll lower the stakes for all riders, because if your horse starts bleeding from the mouth or nose, you're not going to get eliminated. You're just going to get a warning. A lot of what I'm going to be pulling from today is from an article written by one of the fellow co-founders of the Alliance for Horse Welfare and Sport, an organization that I helped co-found as well, where we have been working towards trying to push for policy change in different horse governing organizations. There are a number of wonderful people in that organization. There's a Facebook page if you want to check out what that organization has been posting and what we've been working on and who's a part of it. For reference, the person who wrote this article is Christina Wilkins. Her website is horsesandpeople.com.au, and she is fantastic. Highly recommend following her so that you can see the work that she posts. We're on pretty tumultuous and unstable terrain when it comes to the equestrian industry's social license to operate, which, for those of you who may not know what that is, it refers to how the general public perceives horse sports and the ethicality of horse sports. So the average person that's not into horses is more capable of noticing the problems within the sport. And this is what something that I've personally noticed, speaking from my experience as an equine behavior consultant. If people see photos of horses in sport with blood in the mouth or the nose, because there is one case back in Tokyo with Olympic show jumper Sean O'Connor where his horse started bleeding from the nostrils profusely. And this was something that people saw because it was on the Olympics and more people were tuning into horse sports, and they were appalled by it. So these are things that the average person looks at and they are not okay with, but the horse industry is continuing to try to hyper normalize. The FEI's own Horse Welfare Code of Conduct also states that horse welfare is paramount and should never be subordinate to competitive interests. This predicted rule change is an example of horse welfare being subordinate to competitive interests. There is no benefit to the horse to just give a rider a warning if the horse is bleeding from the mouth or nose. This does not help the horse at all. It's not a decision that's made for horse welfare. It's a decision that's being made on behalf of riders so that they don't have to lose their access to competition over the horse bleeding. It also sets a precedent that that's a normal and expected thing to happen and that all it deserves is a warning. Frankly, if people are immediately eliminated the second there's any presence of blood, it'll up the incentive to not use equipment that increases the likelihood of the horse having injury to the mouth or stressing themselves in a way where they're going to have blood coming from other areas of the body. This should be something that is just a basic expectation in horse sports and something that people should have to maintain in order to have access to competition. If you cannot compete without causing your horse to bleed from the mouth, you don't deserve to be in competition, and it is frightening that this is something that's even up for debate. So for reference, the current rule for blood that this is predicted that the FEI is going to be trying to change, this is the current rule prior to the change. If a horse bleeds from the mouth or flanks, the combination is eliminated. The horse and rider are eliminated. In minor cases where the horse appears to have bitten their tongue or lip, officials were allowed to authorize the rinsing and wiping of the mouth and allow the athlete to continue, but any further evidence of blood resulted in elimination. The new proposal, which is going to be voted on at the FEI General Assembly in November, bleeding will no longer fall under eliminations at all. Instead, the new Article 259 will classify blood on a horse as a recorded warning. So what this means is that if blood is judged to have been caused by the athlete or by the tack or the equipment, the rider will receive a warning, not an elimination. Only after 2 warnings in a 12-month period will the rider face a fine and a 1-month suspension. In cases where the horse is said to have bitten its tongue or lip or to be bleeding from the nose, officials may simply wipe away the blood and allow the horse to continue, provided the veterinary delegate agrees that the horse is fit to compete and no warning will be recorded. The term minor blood has been removed from the new rule. And this is not because it seems that the FEI and the revision lacks clarity, so it puts officials in a place where they're going to have a hard time applying these changes. As noted by Christina in this article, the FEI has no protocol for inspecting horses' mouths for internal injuries. So this puts their officials in a really awkward and haphazard position, because since they've removed the rule about there being minor blood, which in itself is a vague term, how do you prove that there's minor blood? That's up for a matter of opinion. There needs to be more clarity. But it puts these officials under pressure because it's hard to apply these rules, and it's also very easy for the riders to try to defend them because of how the wording is. And even with the horse welfare code of conduct with the FEI, the wording on a lot of the principles in that code of conduct is intentionally vague, and it makes it so that there is plausible deniability and it is hard to actually enforce these things. In her article, Christina goes on to make a point that in animal welfare terms, if a horse is bleeding from the mouth or the nose during competition, the issue is tissue damage, not whether it was intentional or accidental. To suggest that blood in the mouth may be inconsequential while the horse is being ridden over a demanding track in a bitted bridle that is being manipulated and pulled on by a rider in every turn and stride length adjustment is to misunderstand physiology, welfare, and the risks of modern show jumping. She then goes on to say that over the past 2 decades, show jumping itself has evolved into a far more technically demanding and physically extreme sport. The tracks are now as high and as wide as horse biomechanics allow, with lighter poles, flatter cups, and more complex distances between fences. And then she also says it's no coincidence that the rise of hyper-technical courses has coincided with the explosion of combination bits and restrictive nosebands, all of which are designed to control horses who are expressly trained to be hyper-reactive. The French Parliament's 2022 report on improving horse welfare for the Paris 2024 Olympics recommended a blanket ban on combination bits. It didn't happen then, and it's unlikely to happen now because riders have come to depend on mechanical force systems of control. Speaking from experience of watching show jumping, being involved in the show jumping community, and just as an ethics professional and behavior professional, what we're witnessing in the show jumping ring, there's a lot of stress. There's been studies done that mark conflict behaviors in both show jumping and dressage horses, and for both of these types of elite level horses, conflict behaviors were being witnessed every few seconds. For those who are not aware, conflict behaviors are behaviors that are specifically correlated with stress and discomfort. We also see very, very little equipment regulations in show jumping. There's no regulations about what type of noseband is allowable to pair with harsh types of combination bits like gag bits. You can pair a gag bit with a twisted wire noseband, you can pair a gag bit with a twisted wire mouthpiece, and then you can also use a drop noseband or double cavesson noseband or rope noseband. Whatever you want. There's not really anything to stop people from making these choices. And the equipment that is allowed, what you're allowed to pair that equipment with as a combination, as a collective whole for what the horse is having to work through mechanically, that increases the likelihood of having horses end up with bloody mouths because the equipment being used is a lot harsher, a lot easier to abuse, and you're trying to use it to suppress a horse that is showing stress behaviors and to make them more controllable. Christina then finishes her article by talking about the cost of looking away, and she says, the dilemma is not theoretical, it has already played out in full view of the world. And then she references the 2021 Tokyo Olympics, where the Irish horse Kilkenny, which is Sean O'Connor's horse, completed his round bleeding visibly from the nose because the team was in medal contention and no one felt empowered to intervene. She says the proposed rule does not address that scenario, it normalizes it. If this change is adopted, some will say that common sense has prevailed. Riders may feel like they have won, being spared from eliminations that they perceive as unfair, but the sport itself will lose. Public tolerance for visible suffering in animals used for entertainment is shrinking rapidly, and the FEI's credibility as a governing body depends on its ability to anticipate, not react to that shift. The FEI's problem is about enforcement and direction. By reducing what was intended to be a welfare safeguard to an administrative warning, the organization is signaling that competitive continuity matters more than animal integrity. That message runs directly counter to the Olympic Charter's commitment to fair play, respect, and humane values. So here's what you can do if you want to step in and try to stop the FEI from approving this rule change. It's not approved yet. Stakeholders and members of the public still have the opportunity to express their views before the General Assembly votes in November. If you do not agree with this potential rule change, please write to the FEI at info@fei.org and to your national federation. For me, this would be Equestrian Canada. For people in the US, this could be USEF, and urge them to oppose the reclassification as bleeding as a mere administrative warning, and ask them to implement stricter controls and transparency around bit and bridle related injuries. This is not just an issue for show jumping. Christina finishes her article with this. This is not just an issue for show jumping. Every equestrian discipline depends on public trust, and when one sport normalizes injury, all are tainted. The future of the equestrian sport and its fragile social license depends on drawing that line clearly and keeping it there. I'm going to link the link for this article down below. I'll also link the email for the FEI and different national federations that you can contact and write to. I will also work on developing an email template for people that don't want to write their own, so that you can just share it and fill in your own information so that it's coming from you, but you can reuse the template. And then please share Christina's article, give it some love. It has a lot of really concise and incredible information on the topic and all of the necessary links for contacting the FEI. And I highly recommend sharing that to your socials if you just want to share a link and a written post rather than a video. But please, 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 please get your emails into the FEI ASAP. Tell your friends, get everyone to write in and complain. This is a bad precedent to set for the horse world. It makes us all look bad. It's going to impact all horse sports, and it's also going to even impact public perception of how riders are as people and how much they value horse welfare, even when they are just pleasure riders. This is something that affects the entire societal view of equestrianism and anyone who is in the horse world, because it makes us all look bad. People are going to look at this and question, if this can go on at the top levels with a sanctioned organization, what are horse people doing? There's already a distrust in horse people and how we handle our horses and the ethics involved with horse riding as a whole. This is just going to add to it. We need to step in and do something and make it clear that we do not think this is okay. The fact that this is even a proposed rule change speaks for the state of the competitive horse world right now, and we need to shut this down and start to actually push towards moving into more ethical competitive sports if we're going to retain the social license to operate. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you have any other suggestions, please comment them down below, share your thoughts, and don't forget to email.